There is a profound, almost suffocating irony when someone who dedicates their life to fighting the darkness is ultimately swallowed by it. In February 2014, 26-year-old Loretta Saunders was standing on the threshold of a brilliant future. She was a criminology student at St. Mary's University in Halifax. More importantly, she was an Inuk woman who had overcome years of personal struggle to write an honors thesis on a crisis paralyzing Canada: missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. Loretta was determined to be a voice for the voiceless. She was fighting to understand why so many Indigenous women were vanishing without a trace. And then, Loretta vanished. It started with a simple errand. She left her apartment on a cold Thursday morning to collect $430 in overdue rent from a couple she was subletting a room to. She never came back. Over the next 2 weeks, her family would receive bizarre, frantic text messages from her phone. Messages that didn't sound like Loretta at all. One even asked for her own mother's maiden name. When police finally tracked down Loretta's car over 1,000 miles away in Ontario, they didn't find the brilliant, pregnant university student. They found two strangers holding her keys, her bank cards, and a secret that would shake the nation. Today, we look at a crime of unimaginable callousness, a case where the victim was studying the very tragedy she would ultimately become a part of. You're watching Crime Decoded. To truly grasp the tragedy of this case, you have to understand who Loretta Saunders was. She wasn't just a name on a police report, she was a fighter. Originally from Labrador, Loretta had faced a tough youth. She had experienced homelessness and addiction on the streets of Montreal. But she didn't let the streets claim her. She turned her life around completely. By early 2014, she was 3 months pregnant with her first child. She was deeply in love with her boyfriend, Yalchin, and was pouring her soul into her university thesis. Because her graduate funding had been delayed, money was tight. To make ends meet, she placed an ad on Kijiji to sublet a room in her Halifax apartment. The people who answered that ad were 26-year-old Blake Leggett and 28-year-old Victoria Henneberry. To Loretta, they were just a couple needing a place to stay. But to Leggett and Henneberry, Loretta was nothing more than an obstacle. Leggett and Henneberry were broke. They owed Loretta $430 in rent, money they simply didn't have. Instead of moving out, Leggett formulated a plan that was as senseless as it was brutal. They wanted to leave Halifax, and they decided the easiest way to do that was to kill their landlord, steal her car, and drive away. On the morning of February 13, 2014, Loretta arrived at her apartment to collect the money. As soon as she walked in, the trap was sprung. Victoria Henneberry played the distraction. She sat with Loretta on the living room couch, lying that she had lost her bank card and needed to call the bank. She stalled, keeping Loretta seated and completely unaware of what was happening behind her. Leggett crept up behind the couch. He lunged, grabbing Loretta by the throat. But Loretta was a survivor. She fought back fiercely. The struggle spilled from the couch onto the floor. Leggett tried to suffocate her by pulling plastic bags over her head. But Loretta, fighting for her life and the life of her unborn child, tore through 3 separate bags. Finally, in a sickening display of force, Leggett smashed her head against the floor twice. Through this entire violent struggle, Victoria Henneberry never intervened. She simply watched. What followed was a masterclass in sociopathic detachment. Leggett and Henneberry stuffed Loretta's body into a large hockey bag. But they didn't flee immediately. Instead, they left the apartment, went to a local store to return a computer for cash, and then came casually strolling back. They loaded the hockey bag into the trunk of Loretta's own 2000 Toyota Celica, packed their belongings, and hit the road. Driving through a severe winter snowstorm, they made it as far as Salisbury, New Brunswick. There, they pulled over on the Trans-Canada Highway, dragged the hockey bag out of the trunk, and hid it in the snow-covered trees on the median. As they continued driving toward Ontario, the digital deception began. Henneberry used Loretta's phone to text her boyfriend and her family, trying to buy time. The texts were erratic. The fatal mistake came when Henneberry, trying to hack into Loretta's bank accounts to steal whatever money she had left, texted Loretta's family pretending to be stressed, writing, "I'm so stressed that I can't even remember my own mother's maiden name." Loretta's family immediately knew something was horribly wrong. On February 17th, they reported her missing. 5 days after the murder, police spotted the stolen Toyota Celica in Harrow, Ontario. Leggett and Henneberry were arrested. Inside the car, police found Loretta's phone, her ID, and her bank cards. Over a week later, on February 26th, the grim discovery was made on that snowy New Brunswick highway. While awaiting trial, the case took a bizarre turn inside the jail walls. Guards noticed a mop handle was missing from Leggett's cell area and conducted a search for weapons. They didn't find a weapon. Instead, they found 2 empty toilet paper rolls glued together with toothpaste. Written on the outside were the words, legal, personal, and confidential. Inside those rolls was a 35-page handwritten journal. It was a full, detailed confession by Blake Leggett. But it wasn't an expression of remorse. It was a calculated attempt to throw his girlfriend under the bus. Leggett was furious that Henneberry was talking to the police, calling her a leaky faucet. He planned to write a book about the crime and detailed how he was going to blame the entire murder on her to avoid a life sentence. The jailhouse journal was never needed in court. In April 2015, just as the trial was about to start, the House of Cards collapsed. Both entered guilty pleas. Blake Leggett pleaded guilty to first-degree murder, receiving an automatic life sentence with no parole for 25 years. Victoria Henneberry pleaded to second-degree murder, getting life with no parole for 10 years. Henneberry has spent the years since trying to rewrite history, claiming she suffered from PTSD and panicked during her guilty plea. The courts have repeatedly shut her down. But the story didn't end there. Because Henneberry reached her 10-year mark, she was granted a 30-day unescorted pass to a halfway house in late 2024. But true to form, she couldn't follow the rules. By January 2025, the parole board officially revoked her privileges. She was caught using a phone and the internet against her conditions, and when confronted, the board noted she had a deeply dismissive attitude. Loretta Saunders spent her final months trying to bring light to the missing and murdered Indigenous women of Canada. She understood the statistics, the systemic failures, and the violence. While her killers sit behind bars complaining about their privileges, Loretta's legacy lives on in the family and the community that continues to fight in her name. I'm Mark, and this is Crime Decoded. Remember to subscribe and leave your thoughts in the comments.